All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to go through 2024 H2 Math promo paper set by one of the JCs. This promo was set by NJC in Singapore, so without further ado, I'm not going to waste time, we are going to begin. So, okay. So here I'm going to introduce my approach that I use to go and tackle each and every single question. It is important and sufficiently crucial to know my approach because you all need to get used to these four things over here. CSTE. C means content application. S means skill. T means technique. E means exam tips and tricks. Tricks. And these four are extremely crucial because if you know each of them and apply it to different question types, then probably the next exam is going to be a piece of cake for you. But with regards to my general comments for this examination, like I said, if you have been paying attention in class, the first half of the paper, right, relatively easy for you because these question types are extremely common in exams. However, you know that Cambridge is famous for throwing curveball at students, right? So the second half of paper, the NJ setter has tried to throw a snowball at students. This is when they start to lay a trap. And this trap is sufficiently big, it's so big that it can cause the entire question to go wrong, right? If you don't spot it. So the best advice for me to do now is pay full attention to this video. If you are really sleepy or if I'm very boring, my apologies, but please pause the video and take a break anytime. That is why I'm recording a video. I'm not doing a live lecture. Okay, but never mind. So please pay attention to what Vectors D has to say. Okay, so the first approach, not the first one. The first question is on the solving of inequalities worth 4 marks. So when you see the solving of inequalities, right, please remember this is a free gift. The NJ setter has given you a free gift, 送分题, right, in Chinese. Okay, so they say that without using a calculator, you're going to solve the inequality below, and if you will be observant enough, you notice this is a fractional inequality, right? Fractional inequality, especially the denominator below is a quadratic polynomial. So let me show you what I'm going to do, right? So if you were to refer to my answers over here, right, what you have observed is this. We look through my answers first before I continue talking. Okay, so if you have seen what I do here, right? On the right-hand side, this is a -1 on the right-hand side of the inequality. And moreover, this is a fractional inequality with a very, very large degree at the denominator, especially since the quadratic. So you all learn based on hardcore content. Okay, so the first thing you all need to do is always recall your hardcore content. Hardcore content always teaches you that there are two ways to solve inequalities. Number one, you square both sides. And if squaring both sides does not work because it's going to be easily complicated, then the easier way is to what you call go and make everything a common denominator. And once you've made everything a common denominator, what is going to happen is that you're going to end up with a fraction. Then the numerator over denominator, you are going to factorize it. And same occurs for when you go and square both sides. Because after you square both sides, you're going to get a very, very complicated polynomial. And all you need to do is that you need to factorize this polynomial out, and then you are going to find this thing called the critical values. What are critical values? Later on, I'll explain. But the main idea of using these two methods, if you are unaware, is to make the inequality 0 on one of the sides there. So by making the inequality 0, later on it makes the factorization easier. And then when you do your sign test, it's going to like very, very accurately determine what is the solution set that you need. Okay, so solving inequalities is one of the easiest topics in JC H2 math, so please do not make these kind of mistakes. Okay, if you are making these kind of mistakes now, please go and practice it until you are very proficient in your procedural fluency. Okay, so as you can see, what I deliberately did was to make the right-hand side 0 first, such that I'm very, very well aware of what I want to do. Then later on, right, I see, oh, okay, I jolly well make the right-hand side 0 already, right? But then the fraction is still not expressed as a single fraction yet. So because of the plus 1, right? What I'm going to do to make it in the single fraction is, of course, this concept known as the lowest common denominator, right? I'm going to multiply by the denominator here such that I can combine everything into a single fraction and make the fraction common denominator, right? So I multiplied 1 by x squared plus x minus 2. And then after I simplified it to become x squared plus 2x minus, sorry, plus 1, because remember, my apologies, there is a writing error here. I written wrongly. So this one, the fourth line, right? Instead of minus 1, it should be plus 1. Okay. So plus 1 more than equals to 0. And then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to factorize it in the fifth step. So the moment I factorize, remember, based on hardcore content again, your a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, if you can ever spot it here, by the time you factorize it, it's going to be a plus b whole thing squared, right? So when it comes to a plus b whole thing squared on the numerator, then on the denominator, it's a simple factorization of a quadratic polynomial. So it is going to be x plus 2 times x minus 1. And then you're going to claim that this thing is greater than or equal to 0, right? Greater than or equal to 0. Please watch out for this inequality because it is going to determine whether you put a shaded circle or a hollow circle in your sign test later, right? So after I make everything 0 and I factorize what I needed, right? I'm going to find this thing called the critical values. Ladies and gentlemen, please pay full attention. What are critical values? Critical values are values that of x, right? The inequality that is going to render the inequality either 0 or undefined. Why do I need to find the values for which they're undefined? Because if it's undefined, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a very, very, very strict hollow circle on the critical value that makes it undefined, because I need to tell the marker that I know that there is no such value that is going to make the inequality there's no such value that is going to satisfy the solution set in the inequality, right? This is what I need to tell the marker, right? So, okay. So I write down that the critical values are x equals -1, -2, and 1. But if we were to compare with the denominator, right, you'll notice that if I have to sub x equals to -2 and 1, it is going to render the inequality undefined, right? So as you can see, I put the strict hollow circle, right? The strict hollow circle here, because if you were to plot this on the graph, it's actually going to turn out as an asymptote, right? That's how you check. Then, how about the critical value -1? And that is where you must pay attention to the original sign of the inequality. Here, the inequality says it is greater than or equals to 0. So when it is greater than or equals to 0, it is not a strict inequality. That means 0 is included. And because 0 is included, you are going to have to draw a shaded circle. So the -1, I draw a shaded circle. And now what you're going to do is your sign test. Ladies and gentlemen, I say again. I say it once and over again, okay? Sometimes, right, when you're doing exams, right, you will very, very safely assume, right, that they say, oh, okay, one side must be plus, the other side must be minus, and then the signs will alternate. So what you all write is a plus, minus, plus, minus. Ladies and gentlemen, let me clarify, this is not the case for all times. Okay, I say again, this is not the case. The reason being that, as you can see here, right, the turning point is an x of the graph. If you were to plot it, is an x equals to -1. So this means, right, the turning point, this means, right, even at y equals to 0, x equals to -1, right, and there is a turning point, it is going to cause the negative and negative on the left and on the right hand side of -1. So this is something you must watch out for. If you don't know, please plot the graph, right? So using the graph, if the graph lies above the x-axis, it is going to be positive. If the graph lies below the x-axis, it is going to be negative, right? So then, of course, please pay attention to the asymptotes. Then you have thereby deduced that your solution set is x less than -2 and x more than 1. Then you might ask me, hey, Mr. Vectors Lee, you see, right? The question here says without using a calculator. Then how could you have used a calculator to do a sign test? Okay, so when you do a sign test, right? You do a sign test, right? they are not very strict on it. So you don't have to worry. Without using a calculator means you can still use a calculator to check your work. Because what they are more interested in the sign test, right? The sign test, they can close one eye because they're assuming that you randomly substituted one value, right? You randomly substituted one value, let's say x equals negative 2.5 and converted it to the plus sign, although it is easier to use the GC. So this one, they are not very strict. Just continue using the sign test, okay? So now let's focus on content. Content says that there are two ways to go and solve inequalities, factorize them, and make the one side of the inequality zero, right? And then, of course, how to go and factorize things. These are all the polynomials. All these are content. What about the skills? The skill is to recognize that there is not a need to go and square both sides. And in fact, you should not be doing it because if you are going to square both sides, like let's say x squared, you go and square it, what is going to happen? It's going to give you a polynomial of degree 4, x power 4 plus something. And then later on, right, when you go and like what you call multiply it, right, because like you need to go and multiply to the numerator and then factorize the whole polynomial, right? It's going to end up with a polynomial of x power 5. Undesirable, right? So do not square both sides. Keep your life easy. Don't make things difficult for yourself, okay? Then, of course, the technique here is to make the right-hand side 0 and then find the critical values by factorization. I've already said it. And, of course, the sign test. The sign test is a must. Please remember, Cambridge stated in the Marcus report that the sign test is a must. Okay? I read the report with my own eyes. Then, something that a skill that you need to know is also when to use strict inequality, when to use not so strict inequality, which is a full circle, right? When it's a full circle, it is largely dependent on the equality sign. Like here in this case, greater than equals to 0, 0 is included. That is why I put a full circle. When x is equals to negative 1. But if it's more than 0, it should be a hollow circle because it cannot include negative 1, right? When it's more than 0, because negative 1 is going to be inequality 0, right? Same thing for the asymptotes. Asymptotes is the same idea because you submit the asymptote, it's going to render the inequality undefined, which is otherwise called as an asymptote in the graph form, right? So this is something that I want you to take note for question 1. Question 1 is a very standard exam question. So you just read the solutions. After you read the solutions, go and practice more of such questions. Make sure you are proficient in your procedural fluency for this because this is the easiest to score marks. All right, thank you. I will review question 2 in another video. Bye-bye.